The moment someone says you are quiet in a room full of people, usually louder ones, there is a very specific half-second where you consider explaining yourself. And then you don't. You do the smile. Maybe a small shrug. Maybe a quick laugh that says, "Yeah, I know." And then you go right back to watching. Watching the room. Watching conversations unfold in real time like you are seeing a version of them they don't even realize they're showing. And if that feels familiar, this is probably about you. Because most people think quietness is simple, they think it is a confidence problem, a shyness problem, a social skills problem. Like somewhere along the way, you just didn't get enough encouragement, didn't get enough attention, didn't get enough chances to speak, and if someone could just pull you out of your shell, you'd become normal. More outgoing. More fun. More visible. And honestly, that assumption is so common. And so wrong, that it almost deserves its own diagnosis. Because quiet people usually aren't silent because they have nothing to say. Quiet people are often silent because too much is happening at once. And most people never stop long enough to notice the difference. There was a psychologist at Harvard named Jerome Kagan. He spent years studying infant temperament. Specifically, a group of babies he called high reactive. Louder crying, more kicking, stronger reactions. New faces bothered them more. New sounds hit harder. New environments overwhelmed them faster. And what made this interesting was what happened later. When Kagan followed those same children into adolescence and then adulthood, a large number of them became quieter people. More inward, more selective with words. Why? Because their nervous systems were doing more work with the exact same input. Same room, same people, same conversation. But their brains were processing more. More tone. More expression. More emotional information. More contradictions. More things other people didn't even register. So when you see someone sitting quietly in a group, not talking much, looking almost distracted, there is a decent chance they're not disengaged at all. They might actually be the most engaged person there. Just internally. Because while everyone else is talking, they're noticing who keeps interrupting, who is pretending to laugh, who is checking their phone every 30 seconds, who is saying one thing, but meaning something completely different. And that is the thing about quiet people, most people completely miss. Silence isn't always emptiness. Sometimes silence is overload. Sometimes silence is analysis. Sometimes silence is self-control. And sometimes, silence is just intelligence refusing to compete for attention. The modern world doesn't really reward that. The modern world rewards speed. Fast replies, quick jokes, instant opinions. Always have something to say. Always keep the energy moving. Quiet people often don't work like that, because before they speak they filter, they compare. They replay, they test the sentence in their head before it ever reaches their mouth. And that takes time. A lot of time. Which means by the time they found the perfect thing to say, someone else already said the obvious thing. Got the laugh. Changed the subject. And moved on. And now the moment is gone. So they say nothing again. And people mistake that for passiveness. But internally, a lot was happening. In fact, quiet people often have some of the funniest thoughts in the room. Nobody knows it. Because most of those thoughts never leave their head. The joke formed. The observation landed. The timing passed. And now it just lives there. Sometimes they text it to one friend hours later, and that friend usually thinks they're hilarious. But the room never gets to see that version of them. And after enough years, something starts happening. Quiet people don't just stay quiet. A lot of them become private. And those are not the same thing. Quiet is how much you say. Private is how much you let people in. After enough people treated your silence like a problem. After enough teachers wrote things like, needs to participate more. After enough relatives said, why are you so quiet? After enough people looked at your natural state and treated it like unfinished work. That changes people. Not dramatically. Not overnight. Quietly. And eventually, a boundary forms. Not because you are hiding, not because you are broken, but because explaining yourself over and over gets exhausting. So you stop. And now people know your face. But not your mind. They know your name, but not your world. And strangely, that can become lonely. Because here is something most people never realize. Quiet people are often the best listeners in the room. Not performative listening. Not nodding while waiting to talk. Actually listening. The kind of listening that is becoming rare. They remember things. Things you forgot you said. They remember the story about your brother. The comment about your father. The small detail about your job. The thing you brushed past in 5 seconds. That actually meant everything. They notice when your voice changes. They notice when your smile doesn't reach your eyes. They notice when you say you are fine, but your body says something else. And sometimes, because when you notice everything, you carry everything, and carrying everything quietly can make you look distant, cold, detached. But often, the truth is the opposite. Quiet people aren't disconnected. They're usually connected to too much. There is research on this too. Studies on introversion and cortical arousal suggest that introverted people often experience stimulation more intensely, meaning social environments can feel louder, busier, more draining, not because something is wrong, because their nervous systems react differently. The same party, the same dinner, can hit one person like background noise and hit another person like sensory traffic. So, while everyone else is warming up, quiet people may already be full of information, full of impressions, full of social calculations, and eventually, they stop forcing themselves to compete with louder people. Not because they gave up. Because they learned something. Being noticed and being understood are two completely different experiences. And quiet people usually learn that early. Which is why when they finally speak, people notice you probably know someone like this. They barely talk. But when they do, the whole room shifts. People actually stop. People listen. Because those words improvised. Those words lived somewhere first. They were tested, turned over, examined, felt, and only then released. And that is rare, very rare, because most people speak to think. Quiet people often think before they speak. And that changes the weight of every sentence. Relationships are complicated for quiet people too. Especially new ones. Because people often think closeness comes through volume. Talking more. Sharing faster. Opening up immediately. Quiet people usually don't work like that. They study consistency. They notice patterns. They notice how someone treats waiters. How they talk about people who aren't in the room. Whether their kindness changes depending on who is watching. Quiet people are often reading character. Long before they ever share their own. And because of that, some people never really get in. Not fully, not because quiet people don't care. Because trust takes longer when your inner world matters that much. But when someone does get in, really gets in, quiet people become incredibly loyal. Almost painfully loyal, because finding someone who understands silence, without trying to fix it, feels rare, feels safe, feels like home. And maybe that is the part most people never understand. Quiet people don't fear connection. They fear shallow connection. They fear being misunderstood. Being talked over. Being interpreted by people who only understand volume. And after enough experiences like that, silence starts feeling safer than explanation. But silence isn't emptiness. Never was. A quiet mind is rarely quiet. It is usually full. Full of observations. Full of unfinished thoughts. Full of private humor. Full of old conversations replaying. Full of emotional weather nobody else sees. And that is another thing. Quiet people often feel deeply. Very deeply. But they don't always express it outwardly. Grief stays inside. Frustration stays inside. Even happiness sometimes stays inside. Not because they don't want to share it. Sometimes because language doesn't quite fit it. So they carry it. Like they carry most things, quietly. And the world often mistakes that for distance. But distance isn't always the right word. Sometimes it is depth. Sometimes it is caution. Sometimes it is a nervous system that learned not everything deserves to be spoken immediately. And honestly, maybe that is not weakness. Maybe that is discipline. Maybe that is intelligence. Maybe that is emotional precision. Or maybe it is just another way of moving through the world. A way we don't value enough. Because somewhere along the way, loud people became the default. And quiet people became the deviation. The ones who needed to speak up, open up, come out of their shell, as if silence automatically means something is missing. But what if nothing is missing? What if the quiet person isn't unfinished? What if they're not waiting to become louder? What if they're already complete? Just operating on a different frequency. And maybe that is the real psychology here. Quiet people aren't always trying to be understood. Sometimes they're just waiting to see who notices. Without being told. So next time you are in a room with someone who doesn't say much, don't rush to fill the silence. Don't make it awkward. Don't ask them why they're so quiet. Just stay there. Stay present. Let the silence exist. Because they'll notice. Trust me. They always do. And if this felt uncomfortably familiar, if you recognized yourself in more of this than you expected, you are probably not antisocial. You are probably not broken. You are probably not behind socially. You might just be someone whose mind has always worked at a different depth, and the right people, the ones worth keeping, usually figure that out eventually.